I'm Randy Grider, editor of Overdrive Magazine, and I'll be your host tonight. It was a great privilege to introduce our guest for tonight's Celebrity Series, Gary Gentry.
Good to be here.
Thank you, Gary. Gary's a world-famous songwriter who's written songs for Johnny Cash, Ray Charles, George Jones, David Allan Coe, also covered by Tim McGraw and many others. He's known for such hits as 1959, the Corvette song, and his most famous, the classic The Ride, done by David Allan Coe. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment and thank our great sponsor, Dello, for making this series possible. And to our audience, thank you for participating with us tonight. And make sure, when you ask questions, to give your first name and the city so we can give you a shout out. And with that, Gary, welcome. And we've got another guest right here. We'd like to.
It is great to be here, and I got Terry Foss with me, the grave tender from the museum, and it is wonderful to be here with Overdrive. Thank you.
Right.
And you're on.
Now, so our audience knows when you're talking about from the grave, you're a big advocate for Hank Williams, and especially with the song you did years ago that was kind of become your signature, The Ride, about Hank and the ghost of Hank Williams. And Terry
I'm
here is
a member of the Hank Museum, and this old boy down here sees to it that Hank is taken care of. And when anybody's out in the museum, Terry goes in and runs the store.
That's awesome.
So,
Terry, welcome. Today's a very special day. Speaking of Hank, can you tell us a little bit
Happy
about
birthday, Mr. Williams. Today is actually Hank Williams' birthday.
89.
And he's 89 years old today and will live beyond all of us, I suppose, due to the great works and the legends and stories and people that keep talking about Hank. Thousands, millions probably.
Well, Gary, we're going to get back more into Hank in a little bit and find out a little bit more about what you do today with the legacy of Hank Williams and also you, Terry. Let's kind of get back up a little bit. We've talked about some of the songs in the 80s. You were pretty hot in Nashville, but and today, most people would, some people found it surprising that you've kind of given up the Nashville, you still live there, but the lifestyle you had then, and you're driving a truck. Been driving since '89 for McElroy Truck Lines.
Musicians are on the road and so are truck drivers. And when it changed around 1986, 87, I went back to the old trade that I had done in the Navy. I'd driven a truck in the Navy. And Randy, I am proud to be a truck driver. When I was a kid, we used to wash trucks and stuff in truck stops. And when I heard the song, 6 days on the road and I'm going to make it home tonight. You know, I was telling Keith Atkinson the other day, you'd stick your chest out and be proud to be in the business. And the songs that I write today are to try to reinstill that pride that we used to feel of being truckers. They always had big rolls of money with them. They always had these girl stories that they would tell you, and the stories of the road. And there's one thing that you can't take away from trucking. It is the freest job there is. I mean, we're free.
Now, you've been out there over 20 years.
1989, I went back in 1989.
But before that, you were kind of a hot item around Nashville. And let's back up a little bit further. And I know you're from Tennessee.
I'm from East Tennessee.
The Athens area, is that right?
Athens area, Tennessee.
Went in the Navy, but you wanted to be a songwriter when you were young, or you wanted to be a singer? What was your...
Well, when I was in the Navy, I entered the American Song Festival. Mm-hmm. It was a little contest, and I cut it out of the back of the magazine, and sent my little $10 and my little tape, and I won second place and got a check. And I figured, boy, I am rich and famous now. I will go to Nashville, and they'll all be waiting there at the airport for old Gary to get out of the Navy, and we'll sign him up. Wrong. Nobody was there. It took another 3 years before I could get into the doors of the people that would help me. It was just a contest, and that gave me the confidence I needed to come.
But wasn't there something that happened a few years earlier that kind of changed the direction of your life, and it relates to your most famous song? But you came to Nashville and I guess did what would we call it, impromptu stop at Hank Williams' house. And
my mother and my grandmother and I came to Nashville around 1965, and we got on the backstage of the Opry. Our local disc jockey used to date Skeeter Davis before she met or married Ralph Emery.
The end of the
And we
world.
said, yeah, said, hey, Skeeter, we're with WLAR in Athens. Oh, y'all come on back to the Ryman Auditorium. Well, while we were on there was a well-dressed gentleman. I'll tell you who he is in a minute. Well-dressed gentleman, and Ernest Tubb asked him, I said, where'd Mr. Williams live? Mr. Hank Williams? Well, he lives right down Franklin Road. Yeah, that fella right over there can probably tell you exactly where it is. The guy said, as soon as I sang my song, so the guy went out there and sang, Green Acres is a place to be. Eddie Albert.
Right? Oh, yeah.
And Eddie Albert told us he knew Audrey and told us exactly where it was. I got to go through the house. The next morning we stopped by, I told Mama I want to stop and see Hank's house. Well, we can't do that, we don't have an invitation. I pulled the car in the driveway, went up, knocked on the door, and this really nice lady, Mrs. Ragland, who was the maid, came to the door, and I said, ma'am, I'm just the biggest Hank Williams fan that ever was, and that's why I came to Nashville. I love Hank Williams. I want to see his house. Well, come on in, honey. So she brought me in and said, don't let them sit out in the car, bring them in here too. Mom and Grandma. We all went into the house. I went into this huge living room with contemporary furniture. She took me back to Bo Cephas's bedroom, showed me the big picture of Hank and those cold black eyes staring from that portrait. And I said, wow, that's Hank. This is Hank. Hank Jr. had a champagne glass bed, and she took me out and showed me the heart-shaped swimming pool and the bar and the bedroom, and let me touch and feel and see all of Hank's boots. And I said, ma'am, thank you so much. Yeah, I've got to go. Audrey's who I'm talking about. Audrey came out while I was in the middle of the tour, and I figured she tossed me out of the house. She said, can I help you, young man? I said, yes, ma'am, I just wanted to see it. And she showed me the rest of the house. Miss Ragland let us in, but Miss Audrey showed us the house, and she was as sweet as she could be. And I left. I said, Miss Williams, I want to thank you so much for letting me see where Mr. Williams lived. And she said, well, honey, you don't have to call him Mr. The whole world calls him Hank.
And that line stuck with you, right?
The ride that
So
they
you
down
say-
told us when in.
You described to us the kind of piercing eyes, the dark eyes, and
The dark eyes and the half smile Randy told me that, son, you ain't seen or heard the last of me. I'm Hank Williams.
So from that experience, flash forward, what, 20 years maybe? Is that when you wrote the
Let's
ride?
see, it was 1983, and that was about almost 20 years. That was about 64, 65.
Now that song, was it an overnight thing, or what? Was it more of a, you co-wrote that song with someone else?
I co-wrote that with J.B. Detterline. He and I wrote Hank and Lefty that night. And Hank had to, Chuck had to leave J.B. He had a stage name, Chucky D. That was his promoter's name. He had to leave about 10 o'clock. And that night I was still drinking in those days. And I was still doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And about 4 o'clock in the morning I called him and I said, well, I threw away our song. You what? I said, yeah, I threw away our song. I said, listen to this. And I hit the guitar on the telephone. I was thumbing from Montgomery. Had my guitar on my back, and he said, oh my God. Cater, wake up, you gotta hear this, Cater. His wife. So I played the ride for them. No, it was like having the lottery ticket, the winning lottery ticket in your hand. Mm-hmm. And knowing all you had to do was take it down to the store and cash it in. Yeah. I knew it was a monster.
Did you have David Allan Coe in mind to sing it, or did you have anyone?
At that time, to be honest with you, I had Johnny Paycheck in mind. He was one of my heroes. He was a friend. I loved working with Johnny.
He recorded another one of your songs? Is that
he did Drinking and Driving. He did Drink and Drive. He
That
did
sounds
5 of them, but
politically
that's the
incorrect.
only one that they ever put out.
Right.
Because he would do anything I'd come up with, and in those days, I could come up with a lot.
And I guess that's kind of politically incorrect today.
Yeah,
So
some of the
it was
songs.
definitely outlawed. Now, was your first big, was that the first big hit? Is that what came first? You did a couple of songs that were, like, I think, #1 in California.
I had Drinking and Driving actually came out before The Ride, and so did 1959.
Right,
John Anderson.
Right. A very popular song for John Anderson.
And
I
John
think it's on
Anderson.
the 1 million plays, is it?
It did, it's one of the millionaire plays. John didn't really want to do the song at the time. He said, man, I wasn't but 3 years old in 1959. I said, I wasn't but 9 years old, but it's beside the point. Nara Wilson, Carmel Taylor, everybody said it's a hit because they were older than us.
Right.
And they had lived through that decade. He said, well, I'm going to do it.
There was something, I guess, and I'm sure drivers out there want to know where you come up with your ideas. We talked about one, what spurred 1959?
I was sitting there on Colonel Taylor's back porch in his office, broke, couldn't rub two nickels together, and a '59 Cadillac, just like the one I'd seen in Elvis Presley's driveway, pulled in next door. Now this was in 1977, 78, but that Cadillac, as soon as it parked, and it's pink, white rag top, white leather interior, all us guys gathered around it, and of course, we let our imaginations run wild about what all had gone on in the back seat of that car. And I thought, wow, this is it. It don't get a big rocket ship tail lights, you know. I said, man, this '59 Cadillac, what a car. Probably weighed as much as Hank's. How much did it weigh? 8,000? And that night I went home and I was single. Went home for a change. I went home that night, got in the bathtub. It was cold in the wintertime. And I thought, man, it's not the car so much that fascinated us as it was that beautiful decade when post-war, everybody making money, unions were strong, jobbers, truckers were really making the money in those days. And I thought it was that era. So I poured me a big old tall glass of Heaven Hill. I couldn't afford Jack Daniels in those days. So I poured me a big tall glass of Heaven Hill and I sat there and I thought, wow, man, 1959. Cigarettes was a quarter then, bobby socks, and the girl screamed and just fainted over Elvis.
Right.
And I remember Daddy sending me down to the store to get a pack of Cool unfilters, put a quarter in, yank the handle, get the cigarettes for her. I thought, yeah, what a wonderful decade. So that's where that came from.
So did you, I know you wrote the lyrics, you wrote the music for it.
I wrote
So
the music
that-
and lyrics.
I just heard John Anderson do this song about 3 weeks ago at the Great American Trucking Show. I think he played it second or third in his repertoire of songs, and it's just got that feeling that it just kind of lures you back to a school dance or something. And did you wanted that kind of everybody that
Nostalgia. That's all. That's what I wanted to go for was
Is that a hard
nostalgia.
thing to do? Is to try to create that sense in a song? I mean, some songs are more fun, and you know, there's the honing part of the ride. You know, it's kind of, you did a very good job with making that. While it's kind of chilly, but
Thank you.
this one's got a different feeling. It does take you back, even if you're not. I was born years after that, you know, in '65, but it kind of, I think it has something for everybody.
It had something. It was a love song, really. Baby, I'm yours, and I love you always. And the draft was still strong. You still got drafted. And there was so many guys. I'd heard so many guys tell me stories about leaving their loved one behind, going off and getting the Dear John, the proverbial Dear John letter. And I thought, yeah, I can tie that in with 1959, the end of a beautiful decade.
Now, this is you've been in Nashville writing songs for how long when this happened?
Probably 2 years.
So this was your first, and did you know this is going to be a stepping stone here, a pretty big hit, or did you really know?
No, I didn't. I was
You were doing what kind
working for Carmel Taylor and working at a liquor store.
Right.
I was a night manager of a liquor store, Colonial Liquor, down on Franklin Road. And Carmel was nostalgic. He was that kind. He was always reaching back and going for old days. He wrote the Grand Tour for George Jones.
Right.
And he was a very detailed man and gave me more songwriting tips than anybody ever in Nashville since or before. Billy Sherrill zeroed me in on details and fine tuning my songs, but Carmel was just such a simple teacher. And I knew this would get him. I think I wrote that song to nail Carmel. I thought, boy, I'll get old Carmel with this one.
Because he was kind of your mentor.
He was my mentor.
And you wanted something. Now this song, did it put you on to, did you ever have a period during that, I guess it was a 7-8 year stretch, you were a pretty hot songwriter there, and were you able to quit your jobs and go full-time songwriting, or you always worked at other jobs?
Oh yeah, I went full-time songwriting for about 8 years, and during that time, we leased a trailer. We didn't have a bus. We had a Lincoln Continental and a trailer and 4 of us in the car. We worked about half the United States.
Really?
So we didn't make money, a lot of money, but we made enough to pay our expenses and stay out there.
Now, when you heard 59-year-old John Anderson do it, what was that like for you? That had been the biggest name.
John Anderson, I rate as one of the greatest, the last honky-tonk singers we have. If you want a honky-tonk, John can get down. He can also sing rock and other songs, but he's got that lefty Merle Haggard, and this, I don't mean that he's copied him or anything. I mean, he's got that feel to his voice. When he sings, "Your Lying Blue Eye," you believe it. He's very believable, he's emotional, he's credible. Thank you, John, for doing the song, brother.
So that was the first one. That was a pretty big thrill when you heard it. And then, I know you told me you kind of hit a good spot right there. You were still working and you were saving things from, I want to get you to do something for me right quick, Gary. You tell a great story about another famous line from another one of your songs, and before you tell anybody what it is, you're working in a liquor store, it was a hot day. If you get your guitar, maybe you can hit a few licks of that and tell us the story about how that came to be. And if I'm correct, you were working in there and it was a hot Nashville day?
Ed, the lawnmower man, walked into the liquor store one afternoon, and he was one of these guys that used to stop by and buy little old airplane bottles of Old Charter every hour on the hour. Yeah. And he came in one day, it was scorching hot, it was in August, and I said, "Ed, you need to slow down on that and drink you some water, it's hot out there." "Hot? What do you mean hot? It's hot in a $2 pistol." I thought, boy, that is hot.
And that became a famous line for you.
"I had one that was hotter than a $2 pistol. She was the fastest thing around. Long and lean, every young man's dream. She turned every head in town. She was built fun to handle, son. Glad that you walked in. She reminds me of the one I loved back then. Oh, she was hotter than a $2 pistol." Can't do it like yours. That's a little
George
anyway.
Jones that recorded that song, and I think it was your highest charting song. I don't think it stayed up as long as the ride. It went to number 3 on the Hot 100.
Number 3, and was on there for many weeks, and George would do it. God Almighty, she was hotter than a $2 pistol. He do it his way, and every artist makes a song their own, and he did it his way, and yeah.
And you told me you were out trying to close a real estate deal, selling real estate, when that song actually charted, or actually came out on the radio the first time, and you hung up on the guy that was calling you? Or?
Billy Sherrill, record producer Billy Sherrill, legendary songwriter, holds more BMI awards than anybody in history. He was very quiet man. Didn't do phone calls, still doesn't, as I told you tonight. And I was selling real estate. The little secretary came to me and said, "Gary, you got a phone call." I said, "Hey, I'm in the process of closing the deal here. I can't do that right now. Tell him I'll call back." No, I think you better take this one." I said, "Who is it?" Sherrill was nice. "Who is it, Sherrill?" Billy Sherrill. Wow. I picked up the phone, And he said, Garrett? I said, yeah. He said, listen to this. And he turned on George Jones doing, oh, she was louder than a $2 pistol. And I about dropped the phone, I about passed out. He said, keep writing, boy.
So I guess that was when the start of that era when you really went full-time because you were selling real estate then. Couple more, and I'm going to take a couple of questions we've got here, but you've written several other songs that made it into the Billboard Top 40, and I know you've done another one that George Jones recorded with Ray Charles.
Ray Charles.
That was a pretty big hit. It was kind of a novelty song, I guess, kind of a fun song.
I was so grateful for that song. Ray Charles, of course, everybody knows, and Ray used to talk about his handicap. He's blind. He was blind. And Billy Sherrill was his record producer for that album. He said, Garrett, said, Ray Charles, George Jones, I need to do that for him. Well, boy, that was like waving the flag at the bull at me. I went home.
So you were asked to write this song for them, right?
Oh, yeah. I wanted this for them. I wanted a Ray Charles cut. I mean, that's as big as it gets for Ray Charles. So I ran home and I wrote everything. Well, I just happened to turn the TV on, and Ronnie Millsap was on. Well, everybody knows Ronnie Millsap is handicapped visually. And he said, people, I had a heck of a time driving to work tonight, making fun of his own handicap. And I thought, that is so cool. That is cool of the guy to do it. And I thought, wait a minute. I didn't I didn't see you. Hey, that's a good old redneck, Gary.
So you wrote.
I didn't see you. I didn't see you. You didn't see me, and we didn't see a thing.
Did you meet Ray Charles?
I got to meet Ray Charles.
And he was really, he liked the idea.
I'm glad he couldn't see me shaking. I was nervous. I came into Billy's office, and his guide came in ahead of him. And Billy said, now, Garrett, Possum is going to love this song. Now, I don't know if Ray will or not, so I'm sitting there praying, dear Lord, please let Ray love my song so he'll get it, because I can sure use money. Ray came in with his guide, and Billy put it on, and he played just me and the guitar doing that, and George was sitting there over there. And Ray said, oh, Billy, I love it, I just love it. Oh, thank God. Thank heaven. And he just laughed his tail off and took that song and went to his studio to finish up the master.
Right.
In those days, he always mastered and finished and completed his work in his studio in California.
Okay. One more quick song I want to mention, and we're going to get to a few questions we've got right here. You also wrote a song that was kind of probably your most different song for Johnny Cash. Now, you wrote that with Johnny Cash in mind. It kind of reminds a little bit of the Shel Silverstein song that he did, A Boy Named Sue. It's kind of got that feel to it, but that was Chicken in Black. And that was a pretty big commercial hit for him at that time, right?
Johnny, it went to number 40. It only went to 40, but it had been the first number 40 he'd had in a decade. Columbia had failed to promote his records and didn't get behind him. And Billy Sherrill, my boss, Carmel's boss,
right.
He came in and he said, I'm getting ready to do Johnny Cash. Well, I knew that nobody can do, after the Wayne Kemp song, One Piece at a Time, and Shel Silverstein, Boy Named Sue, nobody could do a funnier song than Johnny Cash. And I thought, wow. So that morning, and I forget what I was smoking, but I went into the restroom that morning, and I didn't have my magazine with me, and I thought, well, what am I going to read? Well, I'll read my driver's license. The donor card on the back of your driver's license. And I thought, man, as hungover as I am, I would love to donate my brain to somebody. And I got the idea right there. I thought, wow, Johnny Cash, brain transplant. And I thought, this would be great. And I just started writing it funny like, and I called Billy's secretary, Emily, and she said, that is the wildest thing I have ever heard. Billy, I can hear her yelling on the telephone. Gary's coming in, you gotta hear this thing he wrote. John Cutter loved it at the time. He was mad at Columbia, but he knew I was trying.
And it was a funny video.
He knew this poor old hillbilly kid was trying to write him a song.
And just to point out, if you read the story we had in Overdrive this month about Gary, he's mentioned a few times some of his moments of drinking, and that was a really tough time for you when you, right at the end of your songwriting heyday, is you were having trouble with alcohol and drug abuse and got yourself cleaned up?
I am a recovering alcoholic and addict. I will always be recovering, because the minute you think you're recovered, you're doomed to go back out. And during this recession, I've talked to a lot of drivers. I try my songs out on these truck drivers, and they'll know it. A lot of them probably call in. I try it out on them, because if they don't like it, how am I going to sell it out here to other truck drivers?
So you do this on the CV?
And I do it on that. And I told the boy the other day, I said, look, man, times have been tough the last few years for us brother and sister truckers. And I said, look here. When your back is against the wall financially and you've got nowhere to turn, you close your eyes, you raise your hands and grab onto them nail-scarred hands, and you will be pulled out. It's happened for me, it will happen to you. So don't y'all try any drinking or drugging or anything stupid during these financially hard times. There are some hands to pull you out. And they saved me from the fire in April 1, 1984, from drowning in alcohol and drugs.
You 84, and then you went into trucking in 89. Been trucking ever since, but still riding. Gary tells me he writes every day. And
I write every day, and I call Terry Faust and other songwriters, and we'll swap ideas, and he'll call me back at 3 o'clock in the morning. Hey, I got this idea, listen to this, Gary. And saying, I think, boy, this really sounds good at 3 o'clock in the morning. But
it's kind of like the guy that...
yeah, then I woke up at 4 o'clock.
Well, the guy wakes you up wants to look at his mess of fish. Because they're always the prettiest mess of fish.
Yeah, and you didn't want to get to go fishing.
That's right. Hey, a few questions, and we're going to run out of time here in a little bit, so I'm going to get to them. Favorite song you've ever written?
Favorite song I've ever written was probably 1959, because I remembered seeing Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show and the reaction that the girls went through. I remember the smell of new leather, the cars of that era. I remember life was just great. You had all this, these pompadour-haired guys. Conway Twitty was singing rock and roll then. All these, it was like the birth of rock and roll. Hank Williams was, I Can't Help It If I'm Still in Love with You. All those songs, everything to me was beautiful in the 50s. And I think 1959. I've written a lot of crazy songs, sad songs, slash your wrist songs, all kinds of songs. But when it comes to, I knew that was
your big love song.
That was a big love song. It was nostalgic. And I expect somebody else to record it pretty soon.
I'm going to combine a couple of these questions because people are asking, how do you get started? We've kind of talked on the outsides of how you got started. They want to know if they want to get started, how do they get their creativity, their songwriters, their song or whatever in front of an artist today?
I have a lot of songwriting truck drivers out there that I have sent to Nashville Songwriters Association in Nashville. Now, when I retire in 2 more years, I'll be a lot more active in the Songwriters Association. But in doing that, by joining the association, you're going to get invited to a couple of dinners during the year. It'll give you a chance to go network. Go meet great writers that Randy and I know, like Curly Putnam, the Green Grass of Home. He stopped loving her today. Bobby Braddock, a friend of Terry's.
So you can meet these people.
You can meet these people.
Oh, that's interesting. So they can do that.
And they might, if they like you.
And you've said before, there's a lot of creative truck drivers out there.
I've had, thanks to your magazine, I've had truck drivers pull me over in the parking lot and say, hey, you the guy, ain't you? I said, what guy? Are you the guy in the magazine? And that fellow did that in Mississippi. And I said, yeah, I'm guilty, I'm the guy. He said, look, I want you to talk to my mother. She loves that song so-and-so. I think it was $2 Pistol. And so I called her. Mama had a couple of good ideas for songs. Mama, I had to walk her through how to get involved as a songwriter because she didn't know. But she's sitting there with great songs. There are hit songs in those trucks riding around out there today. And they're going to stay there if you guys don't get up and do something about it. And girls.
And you suggest writing every day?
I suggest writing every day. You know, Randy, if you're gonna write every day. It gets in your subconscious, and by writing it down, you take it out, you put it right here, and it may be the hit line for a song you write next week.
You write also, so you know
Terry,
about this. You write new
he's telling me.
Terry's a local songwriter, and
From
Terry and I
Montgomery?
wrote a
Yes,
couple songs.
local songwriter from Montgomery. I've just come out with my own album. It was just released.
The Grave Tender.
At the Hank Williams
It's called The Grave
Museum.
Tender?
It's title cut.
Took it out of
Grave
your
Tender.
fact that you took care of Hank's.
Yes, I take care of Hank's grave. It's a volunteer thing that I started in 2010 with the death of my friend Cecil Jackson. Gary knew Cecil well.
You say.
He founded the museum in 1999 in Montgomery, the Hank Williams Museum in Montgomery, Alabama. And I was involved in some form with the museum since 1999, off and on. And then in 2010, when he passed away, his daughter, Beth Petty, the museum curator, turned the responsibility and honor of tending Hank's grave over to me. And since then, I've been officially
The
and
Grave Tender.
affectionately dubbed the Grave Tender.
That's quite a nickname. I get that if you ever get a CB handle, is that your CB handle?
Well, I guess so.
Now, the interesting thing, we were talking to Terry earlier, is Terry's got identical twin brothers who
Yes,
both
I've
drive
got,
truck.
I've got, my daddy owned his own truck in 1977 and 78. He had it was a cab over Freightliner with a 318 Detroit with a 13-speed overdrive and run flatbed and haul fertilizer dry. But I have two brothers that are identical twins that both drive for AAA Cooper Transportation out of Montgomery. And we were talking earlier about the funny thing, they both deliver to the same places sometimes. They'll show up to work and have the same clothes on. They don't necessarily wear uniforms. And they'll show up, with the same thing on, and it confuses a lot of
Montgomery's not that big, is it?
That's right. Montgomery's about, 250,000 people.
Everything comes back to trucking all the time.
It all
Okay.
goes back
If
there.
any of you guys are ever down at the museum in Montgomery, the Hank Williams Museum, you're there quite a bit.
I'm there quite a bit.
Gary, you're there for a lot of
And can I
anniversaries.
say one thing, speaking of the museum and speaking of the Williams family? Jet Williams said, Gary, tell my trucking friends I love them so much, and thank you for supporting my Mother's Best Flower shows on satellite radio on Willie's Roadhouse. Her husband and Jet and our dear friends, and Hank Williams is her daddy. And I'd love to see a Hank Williams 24-hour/7 show on satellite sometime, so we'd drag Randy over there and we'd come over here and she said to thank all you truckers, and she is writing trucking songs. She spit out 3 great ideas the other day, and her husband gave me one of the best ideas for a trucking song
You've been in trucking
I've heard in a
before,
long time.
so.
He said, Gary, get the government out of my truck. That's a song I want to write. So we're writing.
Hey Gary, a lot of people want to know about the royalties, and we didn't get into that much of the story, but you do still collect royalties on all your songs every time it's played. Now the big thing today is every time something's downloaded.
Download.
Downloads are a big business now. Going into all of this, we have Mark from Cookeville, Tennessee, if you know where that's at. He's wanting to know if you're currently working with anyone for the industry, writing anything or working with anyone in the music industry.
Right now, I'm starting to write for Keith Atkinson. Now, he is Hank Williams' son-in-law. That's Jet Williams' husband, and I think we're about to fill his publishing company up with song ideas. Thank you, Mark.
We're just about out of time, and just a couple of things. I know Gary's got, besides the hits that we've all come to know and love, you're with Laughing Hyena.
Laughing Hyena
Yeah,
Red.
trucker songs, and is there any way you can tell our people how they can get this?
They
You
can
got a
get that
webpage?
either in the TA truck stops or just go online, just like you would Terry's on the Grave Tender. You can go online and get it, or you can stop at the Hank Williams Museum.
Right now it's available at the Hank Williams Museum in Montgomery, Alabama. Their website is...
Is that your album that you got? And what about, is this available here right
That's available in the TAs.
All trucker songs originally written, or you got some covers on here?
I've got some guys, I've written the Red Savine tribute, and we wrote a couple of other songs, but some of them are Dale Reeves and some of the other songs. I did not write but about 3 of them.
All right, guys, if anybody does want to get a hold of you though, is personally wants to write to you, you have an email address or website? How would they need to?
Snail Mail, P.O. Box 517, Madison, Tennessee, 37115.
We'll do it old school.
I do it old school, and if they're doing something wrong in the song, I'll be the first one to pick up the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning, call and tell, hey, I don't like that way.
But they can get a hold of you by just writing to you at that.
Sure.
You just give it, right now, no website you're doing? or
No
anything?
website, my website partner's house burned down and lost everything he had, and we hadn't reestablished it.
Gary, we can look for you on the road?
Look for me on the road, I'll be up in West Virginia tomorrow.
Your big red truck still
Big
driving
red
down the
truck,
road?
McElroy Truck Land, I'll be flatbedding tomorrow and, be talking to you guys in the parking lots, and lumber yards, and steel mills.
Yeah, if you see Gary out there, stop in and say hello. And like I say, a real legend in Nashville, and we're glad to have you here today with us also, Terry. I wish we'd had time to get to your poem. Terry wrote a little, if you've done the museum, he's written a little parody of the ride that Gary wrote. It's really funny. It's got a trucking angle. I don't think we got time to go into it. Would you share trucker guys that come by there?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's
All right, it's pretty good, and of course the ride, maybe as we're doing the last part of this, you pick up the guitar and do the last part, right after I say, tell everyone a few quick things right quick. I'd like to take a moment, one more time, to thank Dello for making this series possible.
Thank you.
And we'd like you to come back next month when we'll have Edgar Hansen of Deadliest Catch will be our guest, and it's been incredible to have Terry and Gary here. And Gary, if you just give us that classic line from the ride that...
Well, it cried just south of Nashville. Turned that car around. He said, this is where you get off, hillbilly. I'm going back to Alabama. I stepped out of that Cadillac. I said, mister, many thanks. He said, hey, you don't have to call me mister, boy. The whole world called me Hank. He said, Tripper, can you make folks cry when you play and sing? Have you paid the dues? Can you moan the blues? Can you bend down guitar string? Or can you make folks feel what you feel inside? Cause if you're big star bound, let me warn you, it's a long, hard ride. Thank you, Randy. Thanks, Overdrive Magazine.
Thank you for all your sharing this with us, and thank you for what you do every day as a truck driver. One talented truck driver out there.